The barrier between Earth's hemispheres had been crossed by Christopher Columbus on his ocean voyage in 1492. A whole new world was opened up to the European kingdoms, rife with natural resources to claim and people to conquer. For the natives of the Americas, they were about to experience a shocking collapse to their own civilizations, societies, and survival. It's 1682. French explorers are moving through the southeastern Mississippi Valley, once explored by Spanish expeditions under Hernando de Soto a century ago upon his arrival in Florida in 1539. De Soto had remarked regarding the same valley the French now stood that the land was thickly set with great towns, and that 2 or 3 of them were to be seen from one. In contrast, the French came to explore an almost abandoned area of land. Once home to around 50 settlements, the land now held only 10. In just over 100 years, the network of city-states was decimated by disease, namely smallpox.
Origin of smallpox. Smallpox's devastating power in the Americas came to be much earlier in the heart of developing Europe. While the first trace of smallpox dates back to Egyptian mummies around 3,000 years ago, its world-shaping power didn't come into effect until about 6th century Europe. Europeans, by the 1500s, had a rather special relationship with disease. Europe had most of the world's domesticatable animals, which brought with them various diseases. The working relationship with which Europeans had with livestock gave them many of their devastating diseases. While some diseases had been circulating around the world for millennia, many of them found their home in closely packed European cities. The density with which Europeans lived by the year 1500 fostered several epidemics, with many of them decimating the European population before allowing it to flourish again. The path of smallpox. The likely path that the first epidemic, smallpox, had traveled since being brought by the encounters with Columbus started in the Caribbean. Carried across the Caribbean islands and massacring the populations, it was brought to the mainland during the conquest of Mexico. From there, the disease reached out across the Americas, massacring native populations as it went. Disease swept across the land and ravaged populations before Europeans even had the chance to hear about it. Oftentimes, smallpox would travel faster than the conquistadors themselves. Death and destruction from disease wreaked unimaginable havoc across the Americas, continuing to spread and consume as the disease spread on to the virgin soil of native populations with absolutely no biological defense to the disease. This in turn would destroy their crops, thus preventing them from recovering. Short and long-term effects of smallpox in the Americas. As far as short-term effects go, it was the immediate decimation of Mesoamerican populations, followed by North and South American populations later on, which in conquest with European military and administrative advantages resulted in the colonization of the Americas. Whereas European populations had time to regain their populations and rebuild their society after their initial plagues, Mesoamericans were not allowed the same privilege. At the same time that they were being killed off by disease, they were subsequently being dominated and colonized. According to an article from UW Press, research by some scholars provides population estimates of the pre-contact Americas to be as high as 112 million in 1492, while others estimate the population to have been as low as 8 million. In any case, the native population declined to less than 6 million by 1650, with a population of 112 million or thereabout being more probable than the estimated lowball offer of 8 million.
Smallpox had the largest impact on indigenous people of the New World, including the Aztecs in 1520. Vulnerable to the disease because they were never exposed to it, the Aztecs were affected in an immense way. The population was massacred, particularly infants and young children. Adults were either sick themselves or taking care of their sick relatives. The Aztec military simply lost the strength, both in force and numbers, to resist the Spaniards, as they saw disease destroy those around them. People could no longer tend to their crops, leading to widespread famine, further weakening the immune systems of survivors. The Aztecs' newest Tlatoani, Cuitlahuac, died from the disease. Amidst pressing tension by Cortes and his native allies, who were also crippled by disease, the Aztec Empire lacked a stable leadership during the Spanish conquest. If it wasn't for the smallpox epidemic that ravaged the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, prior to Cortes' siege of the city, it's likely that the Aztec people would have held out in the intense and gruesome siege. The conquest likely would have failed, or at least the power shared between natives and Europeans, if it wasn't for Europe's most powerful ally, disease. Due to the epidemic, the cultural and social cement for hundreds of bands, tribes, nations, and states were not only lost, but destroyed. The consequential power vacuum created by the toppling of empire in Central America was consolidated not by other native powers, but by Europeans, as the natives lost their strength from smallpox and their future of self-government.
The Incan Empire, another victim of smallpox. Before the arrival of smallpox, the Incan Empire was a flourishing state that lasted between the 12th and 15th centuries AD. It consisted of a complex agricultural system overseen by their government. Additionally, the Incan Empire constructed thousands of miles of roads, worshipped their own gods, and conquered neighboring states. The Incan Empire, ultimately, smallpox, in addition to the Spanish military, sealed the fate of the Incan Empire. What was once a proud state found its working class succumbing to the disease, leading to food shortages. Additionally, much of the Incan nobility died, leading to power disputes and a civil war that further weakened the Incan state. As far as long-term effects go, Native American populations were never really able to rebound. They have increased some since the time of colonization, but not in any comparative way to the other ethnic groups that now occupy the United States and the Americas. Between the decimation of 90% of the Native American population and the subsequent assimilation of the rest of the population, unfortunately much of Native American culture was lost due to the conquest of the Americas.
Estimates for the numbers of natives that were killed by disease range from 80 to 100 million lives. The mortality of these diseases took up to 95% of the total native population in the Americas to their graves. If the numbers are correct, this would mean that disease brought from Europe had killed off 1/5 of the world's population. Death and destruction from disease wreaked unimaginable havoc across the Americas, continuing to spread and consume as the disease spread on the virgin soil of native populations with absolutely no biological defense to the disease. Comparatively, the Black Death, considered the most profound instance of human contagion in the Western world, took from Europe anywhere from 1/3 of Europe's population up to the more recently supported average mortality rate of 50 to 60% of its population. The Black Death is considered the defining and most impactful event in the late Middle Ages, bringing with it considerable influence and change over European society and culture that remains prominent today. It influenced the stability and power of the Catholic Church, the culture of those that followed it, the study and practice of medicinal procedure, and the dynamics between church, state, and individual. The Black Death accomplished this by killing off anywhere from 1/3 to 60% of Europe's population. Yet in the Americas, less than 200 years later, a population of 2 continents was almost completely dissolved.